My paranormal experiences started when I was about 2 years old, and it was about 1972 or 1973. And I'd like to start there because as I've been telling my stories, my paranormal stories, spiritual, mystical, sometimes I will skip over this part and go on to other times, but it's because it's so unique. It's beyond seeing a spirit standing at the end of your bed. This is like what Moses saw. So this time frame was when you go from your crib to your first bed. So it was somewhere in that time frame in my life. I'm guessing I was about 2.5, 3, somewhere in there. I was a very aware little kid. I can still remember things that I was thinking about at this such young age that seems really deep. So as I was waking up, I was laying on my stomach and my left arm was under my pillow. And I remember that my arm felt really, really warm. And I opened my eyes and I'm truly just now waking up. And throughout my life, I've had the same just waking up and seeing objects. So I open my eyes and there are flames shooting between my bed and the wall. And it was clearly fire, but there was no sound of crackling. There was no scent. Nothing was actually burning anything. It was just me seeing flames. Just like the way that there's this description of Moses seeing fire inside of a bush, but the bush was not burning. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know what that means. I've had that experience. And I had that same reoccurring experience for many years throughout my childhood. And then the last time I remember having it, I don't know exactly how old I was. I'm going to say maybe 12. I'm not sure. I was now living in a different house. I was like 6th, 7th grade, somewhere in there. I opened my eyes and there's the same fire shooting out at the head of my bed. And I got up and I ran out of the room because I'm like, oh my God, my bed is on fire. And I go running out into the family room and my mom is sitting on the couch just peacefully like knitting or something, watching TV. And I'm like, Mom, my bed's on fire. And I'm very strongly freaking out that my bed is on fire. Like, this is serious. And I realize that my mom is not reacting whatsoever to me. I'm just like, what is her problem? And it just kind of made me feel like maybe, I don't know, why is she not caring that the house is on fire? And so I walked back to my room and there was no fire. And I don't know why it finally stopped at that moment. Maybe it was my age and then seeing that my mom really, maybe, and then I think that she had probably seen me do that before without me realizing it, like running around in my sleep or something. So that was my first unique seeing something that is, I think you can call it beyond the 5 physical senses. And so that was at that age, 2.5, 3. I was a very active kid, very athletic, just right away, just running, aiming rocks at something in the water, just really enjoying moving and running and playing, and got really super into sports at a very young age, winning teams, learning amazing lessons from coaches. Not just, the really good stuff of posture and the right form and doing it right the first time and practicing, but life lessons too. So I started, doing the team soccer at about 8. So when I was about 7 or 6, I spent a lot of time also outside. I was very outdoorsy. My dad loved to camp. We did a lot of exploring the mountains of California, boating. fishing, all that kind of stuff in the mountains of California, Santa Cruz Mountains and the Sierra Nevadas, Lake Oroville, all those areas up there. The logging roads, we would find old mining operations that were just left. The tools and the building and being able to walk into the shack and just see things still laying on the table. And just, that was amazing to be able to do that kind of stuff. So just really into, enjoying that experience of being in the country and the mountains and the forest and all that stuff. So very in tune to my surroundings. I also was adopted when I was really little, like an infant, 6 weeks old. So I came to live with a couple at that time, and I just was able to recognize that there was some, I'm going to say, just dysfunction that I was around at home. I'm very thankful that I had the sports and then Girl Scouts and Brownies and the nice people that I was around. It was very Catholic and Jewish communities, very nice communities, very welcoming. So I got to understand like functional behavior, good behavior and being kind towards kids, and this sort of bipolar experience with my parents. They were really helpful and great, and other times they were not helpful and not nice. So around 6 or 7 years old, I was laying in my bed. It was that time of night where you just got into bed, and it was early, like the summer. And so your mom's like telling you to go to bed. It's still light out, and you're like, I'm not even tired. What? You can hear kids playing outside. So brushed my teeth, put my pajamas on, got into bed. And after I remembered this experience and really kind of thinking about it, I wonder if the reason why this experience happened was I thinking some things? Was I feeling a certain way? Was I feeling sad, or was I feeling peaceful? Or, this kind of stuff is good to kind of think about, like, before you have experiences, because then you kind of can understand how the metaphysics behind experiences happen. So I'm laying in my bed, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and as far as I can remember, besides the seeing the fire when I wake up, this was my next profound experience. The best I can describe it is, imagine almost like either flowing water or flowing dry ice coming out from the corner ceiling of my room, the right corner ceiling of my room. I could just feel like a mass, a flowing of energy just starting to take up space in my room, not covering me, but almost like when you blow up a balloon, or when you put, let's say, some coloring into water and it starts to just kind of take up the space in the water. It was just, I could just feel it coming into the room, and it was big. And, over the years, as I've put this together, and, it's like a genie coming into a bottle. It was like a giant, a size beyond, hard to describe, beyond what we've seen on TV with the giant skeletons. I mean, I'm talking about a size that's, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's a size beyond. The best way I can describe the size is when I think about the science books, and they're showing a description of the skin, and then there's different layers of the skin, and so they're using a magnified example of the layers of skin, and that's what it was like. The size of this explanation of the layers of skin, like a blown up, and then imagining that this being or beings that were in my room were very large. The feeling was a feeling that I was trying to figure out what was going on when this energy was in the room. And soon after that happened, I started feeling like time started to feel different, like sometimes sped up and sometimes slowed down. And I was just trying to be a kid at school. I was like second, third grade. I started hearing the sound of Om, like a very, very loud sound of silence, which the primordial sound of the universe, the primordial sound of silence. It was so loud in the middle of the night. And I remember thinking, am I the only one hearing this right now? It was trippy, this loud silence sound. Then it was like my intuition kicked in. I mean, I'm not sure if I was already having these experiences or if these beings that visited me, if they heightened my abilities or allowed me to be more open or something. Like that was what had been thinking about for a lot of years as I put these understandings together. I found out later through a woman who is able to really communicate with the archangels. I had started thinking like, I think that they were archangels, that it was an archangel visiting me or archangels. And I was right. It was a archangel named Metatron, and I think the other one's name is Sandalphon. Metatron has a cube, and he was placing it over me to help me and give me extra protection and help while living my life as I was living my life, with my experiences that I was having at home and just in general with who I am as a being on this planet. So that was super verifying finding that out. I just found that out like last year that she was like, yep, yep, they were archangels that were visiting you. So I don't remember if it was just that one time or if it was multiple times. Throughout my elementary school years after that, like 8 years old, 9 years old, first time I saw spirit, we went on a road trip. Me and my mom and dad drove across the states from California to Illinois, and we stayed at my great aunt and uncle's house, and I was seeing their house for the first time. And my grandma and grandpa, they drove their truck and they pulled their fifth wheel trailer. They parked it in their driveway. So that night they put me in some spare bedroom. I think the door was open and everyone's in their own rooms. It's all quiet. And all of a sudden this guy walks into the room, and I could clearly see he was like a silhouette. So I could tell it was a guy, the way he was walking, the way he was standing. Like he had a jacket on and pants and like the shape of shoes. I could like describe his size and all that. Like he just looked like a human being. He just came walking right into the room and stood there for, like, I don't know, a couple seconds or something. But I was tripping out. Like, what the heck is going on here? So I don't remember if he just walked right past, like right back out of the room, or if he just dissipated in that spot. I don't remember that, but I do know that I wanted to get out of there. I didn't know where my parents were in the house. I wasn't going to go running through the house opening doors. I knew my grandparents were outside in their trailer, so I ran out and knocked on their door, and they were so happy to see me. And I'm like, can I come and sleep with you guys? Yes. They had no idea. So I told them later. I was visiting their house in Oroville. We were sitting around listening to Kenny Rogers and playing cards. And years later, so that experience was in 1978 or so. So this was, let's say, later 90s or something, maybe early 2000s. I can't remember. And all of a sudden that memory popped into my head, and I was so happy to get to talk to him about this. I'm like, Grandma, do you remember the time we were over at Aunt Hope's and I knocked on the door and I wanted to come sleep with you guys? Yes, we remember that. I'm like, do you know why I wanted to sleep with you guys? Yeah, because you wanted to be with us. Well, yeah, that was nice and all, but I saw a ghost in there. There was a ghost in that house. I could tell they believed me. They were just looking at me with like, wow, look on their face. So I just started having more and more experiences like that. It kept going into my high school years. I felt a spirit walk into the room. I couldn't see the spirit, but I could tell just by kind of, I guess, my inner senses, the size of the spirit. And then it walked out. these little things like that. That same time frame when I was in high school and I had this boyfriend, I stayed at his house a lot. He lived in a neighborhood like 5-minute drive from where I grew up. So I'm going to say it was 1986. We're getting in his truck. He had an El Camino. It was way too fast, like way too scary fast for his parents to have gotten him that muscle car. But I'm very thankful to have survived that. We are in a really nice neighborhood. There's no sidewalks. It's the neighborhood that you drive under the speed limit because of the way that the neighborhood is. So he just gently backs out of the driveway and we're just sort of putting down the street. And there is a little 4-way intersection. And as we're in the middle of this little 4-way intersection, my eyes happen to look up into the sky, like imagining the house is on the left, above the house on the left, up ahead of me, like 2-3 houses up. I see a round object hovering in the sky. It's not that high up. I mean, it's taller than the pine tree. So let's say a pine tree and a half, just hovering up in the sky, right there. And I'm like, oh my God, what's that? Or something like, look at that. What is that? You know, pointing over there. He's wanting to drive closer. And I'm like, no, don't go closer. Because I was afraid that beam of light was going to come down. I mean, it is mind boggling. I, when it was happening, just, oh my God, what? We're really seeing a UFO right now. That's what it was like. So he's like, I just want to just drive a little bit past it so I can see from another angle. So I'm like, okay. So we just drive slowly past the houses. Now there's a little curve that curves to the right. So he goes into the curve and turns back around. So now we're facing this hovering round object. It's not really big. Bigger than, let's say, just a regular helicopter. The round part that you're in, imagine that, but it's like another size bigger than that, but pretty round. It's hovering in midair. There were these lights on it that were spinning. Like it was like, is the light spinning? Is it spinning? I'm not sure. It was changed. The lights were changing color from like blue to red, white, something like that. And I couldn't believe my eyes. And we watched it for like, I don't know how much time went by, 10, 15 minutes. At one point, a helicopter flew near it. Obviously, who was ever in that helicopter saw this. So I don't know what that was about. Just telling you that that's what happened. Then it left. So we're watching it, and this is like 10 at night or something. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just from 0 hovering in the sky to a zillion just shoots across the sky like Star Trek. Just quick. I could see it right now in my mind. Shooting across the sky and then gone. We were just freaking out. Wow. What the heck was that? I don't remember exactly what we talked about. I know that I was either thinking or saying that, okay, this is going to be weird. How am I, going to explain this to my dad? I'm late because we were watching a UFO. I don't think that my parents even knew I was late, but that's what I was thinking. So that happened in 1986. And then, of course, after that now, I am just staring at the sky even more than I was before and just seeing other lights in the sky throughout the years that are not the same flight pattern as the planes in the area that you're at. There's only one light. There's no sound coming from it. Things like this I've seen now. So as I was continuing to just live my life, live in different houses here and there, I was continuing to have spirit type experiences. In my late 20s, I was living in a house and I had the whole house to myself a lot. It was a 2-story house. It was her house, her parents' house. Her parents lived in Florida. This was still in California. But she was at her boyfriend's a lot. So I had the house to myself a lot. It was great. So this one night, I had a routine. I'd get ready for bed and I'd read my book in bed. And I was doing that. And all of a sudden I was hearing like this tapping, and it was coming from the wall area next to my bed, left side above my nightstand. There's just something inside of me that I've realized that I'll know the right thing to do in the moment. And then later on, as you're gathering the information, it's like, that is a good thing to do. You don't know what it is. You maybe should just pretend you don't hear it and just kind of know it's happening and don't react and, just kind of see what's going on. So I was kind of going through my mind like, okay, is that pipes making noise? There's no water's running. Okay. Is it like a rodent in the wall? Nope. I don't think that's what a rat would sound, or like it wasn't like a scratching. It was just a tapping. And then I realized all of a sudden, like there was a higher awareness of the feeling that somebody was standing next to the bed, purposefully just tapping on the wall to get my attention. And it was like tap, 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 tap. Just these different ways of tapping. And I just pretended I didn't hear it. And then it stopped. And then like maybe a couple days after that, I realized as I was laying there in bed reading and I was sitting up, I was starting to feel that someone was standing in the room, kind of near the door, and then they would slowly start walking through the room and get to the foot of my bed. And it was so quiet and this just very silent, very quiet. So it was almost like I could hear this super quiet sound of somebody walking, like just the movement in the air, if that makes sense. And again, I would just pretend like I didn't know it was happening. That was my late 20s. I finally asked my roommate, and she said that, I think she said it was her uncle or maybe a grandpa that died in the next room over. So that was interesting to find that out. One night I was downstairs and I was laying on the couch, had my parrot with me. I started hearing footsteps in the upstairs, like the creaking sound of movement up there. And my parrot was even like tilting her head and like looking up, like she was hearing it too. So that was in the later 90s. I wanted to move up to the Santa Cruz Mountains. I grew up very close to the mountains, minutes drive, riding bike distance to the foothills. So I moved up to what's called the Los Gatos Mountains in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And it's an area between Silicon Valley and then driving over the hill to Santa Cruz. So that area of the mountains. I was up driving around in the mountain roads up in that area that I was just telling you about, Los Gatos Mountains. And I saw a flyer, like a piece of paper taped to a stop sign. And it was saying, like 2-bedroom cottage for rent. And it said the amount for the rent. At that moment, I was like, that's a number higher than I want to pay for rent. I drove back down into town, but I kept thinking about it and I decided, I'm going to call him anyways. So I brought my parrot with me. I have a macaw. I have a blue and gold macaw. I brought her with me. I bring her a lot when I go do things. It was the best thing I could have done because this guy had a cockatoo. And so it was like an immediate just connection with our birds. So he lived off of a highway. I feel like there's going to be some people listening to this that are going to know where I'm talking about, because when I was saying my Bigfoot sighting story, there was a couple people that commented around this area that I'm talking about right now. So that was fun. Okay. So the entrance to this property that I went to go look at, this 2-bedroom cottage, was on 72 acres in the middle of, just imagine an amazing redwood forest, just like being at a state park, just redwoods and ferns and springs and creeks and just the owls and the deer and, just nature, just all around. It's amazing. So you had to open a gate, like the kind that you pull sideways with wheels on the bottom. And I pulled the gate open and then drove through and then pulled the gate closed, got back in my truck. And then it was like a couple minute drive through the woods on a paved road to go meet with this person that was going to show me this cottage. It was like a moment, just the whole experience. I ended up living there for about 3 years, and I never wanted to leave the property because it was just so amazing. Like one of the best times of my life living this place. And it was like 3/4 of the way fenced, the property. I meet with the guy, and this cottage is the last remaining cottage from when there was a really nice resort in that area, on that land in the early 1900s. Lots of history on this land. And it was another experience in my life where I got to live on land that has, lots of history on it. There's that cabin, and then the other structure that is still present is what is called the Chateau Liberté. There might be some people out there that know what I'm talking about when I say that name. It was a Harley bar, kind of like a bar restaurant in the 60s, 70s, that a lot of the bands got their start playing at this bar restaurant place, the Chateau. The Doobie Brothers and some others. It was so neat getting to tour it around, and he showed me journals of when people stayed in the hotel that used to be there, where you put your little notes of how you liked it there and describing. And from the early 1900s, he said to me, "No one's died on the property." I remember him saying that to me. So I started living there. I got the place. I mean, at that time was the .com thing was booming. There was like, you fill out an application and lots of people filling out applications for the same place, especially that place, because the drive is like 15 minutes from town to Los Gatos and like 15 minutes to Santa Cruz. It was just in a great location, in the mountains. I got the place. And so I figured it out. I figured out how to pay the rent. I was going to figure it out. I don't care. Like if I was going to just eat peanut butter and jelly the whole time I was there to be able to live in this location. As I lived my life there, I was able to get feeling right at home very quick in this little cabin. Not a cabin. It was just like a little house. It's just, it had the windows, some of the older windows were definitely still present. The warbly glass. There was a round window on one of the sides of the walls of the family room, the kind of windows that you used like a lever and did the lever in like a circle, and then the window would swing out to open the window. It was peaceful up there, and I cannot say I can't express how much I loved being up there. And so still in my life, I was reading in bed before going to bed at night. That was like my routine for years, like just getting ready for bed. I was reading a book about a family that lived in this haunted house for 12 years. And wow, some of the experiences and it was this nurse. It was her book. She was telling the story. And I'm saying this because I feel like, as I've learned about things like this, that this could have been what triggered these next experiences that I had, because maybe I was in such mode of tuning into this sort of stuff. So I'd finished the book, and this is when I started seeing apparitions, like full blown, looks like a human just standing in front of you type apparition. Regular night, just went to bed. It's like a queen size bed. So I opened my eyes to myself already sitting up in bed. Like I open my eyes, I'm sitting up. My eyes focus, and there is a lady and a boy standing right there in front of me. They were dressed in very nice clothes from the early 1900s, I'm going to say. Maybe the late 1800s, probably the early 1900s, because it makes sense with the history of that area. It was like I was seeing into their time. They were oblivious of me. The boy was standing in front of her, And he looked like he was about 9, 8. And she looked like she could have been in her late teens, early 20s. So I don't know if it was like the older sister or his mom. I don't know. These two people standing there, and I could not believe my eyes. I was just staring and staring, taking it in. Just wow. It was fascinating. And they were just standing there, not really moving. And they just started dissipating. Just all of a sudden, it was like both of them together at the same time, dissipating, and then was gone. And then I just laid back down and went back to sleep. I don't know how I was able to do that, but I did. I've seen a lot of things when I wake up in the middle of the night. So I just think it was just kind of like that. Like, wow, that's just a lot to take in at that moment. I'm going to go back to bed. So I was in the family room, and at that time, I just had a little tiny TV, like the old school, like box TV. It was a small TV. I don't know, like the size of a laptop or something. And so I got my lounge chair, and I would just put it in the family room. I just put my lounge chair close to the TV to watch like Shrek. That was like the movie I had to watch. I didn't feel like getting cable or anything like that. I was fine. I was doing lots of other things, but I would get like a couple of the CW. I started watching Gilmore Girls. Love that show. And Shrek would just be playing. But anyway, so I would, sometimes just fall asleep on the couch out there when I was, watching Shrek or something. And so this one night I was, sleeping on the couch on my left side, and there was a coffee table in front of the couch. I opened my eyes in the middle of the night. This happens a lot, where just there's this subtle shift or something that I wake up and I see the boy and the woman standing there. And because of where my head, was laying on the couch, I could only see from kind of the waist down. Not because there was only the waist down of them. It was just that's where my eyes were looking at that moment. And then all of a sudden, the boy like leaned down to kind of tilt his head to check me out. And whoa, that just startled me. I feel like I jumped like 4 feet. Like that freaked me out. He moved. And so it happened so quick, where just this inner, like, I'm going to pretend like I didn't notice, and I'm going to just turn over and I'm going to go back to sleep. So that's what I did. And they look exactly the same two people. So then I don't know if it was a week later, days, I'm not sure, a couple weeks, don't remember. Same thing, fell asleep on my side on the couch. This time, okay, I open my eyes, and now his face is like a foot or so from my face. Can you imagine that? Open your eyes and there's a person's face staring at you in your face that close. Whoa, you open your eyes and it takes a second to kind of process. And then he had blonde hair, and he was looking at me like with his his eyebrows sort of crinkled, just kind of like I didn't know if he was looking at me in an angry way or if it was like, what is that? What am I seeing? Like, what was he thinking that? Like, what is he seeing? So that really startled me. I jumped like again 3 feet in the air, and I just casually tried to turn my body towards the couch and just went back to sleep. That was a trip. And that was a big part of my evolvement and my interest in the understanding of these different matters, these different spiritual matters of what is a ghost, and was I seeing into their time, and was I the ghost to him? So some of my wonderings. So then a week or two after that, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm laying on my back. And when I open my eyes, my head is kind of tilted to the left. So when I open my eyes, I see just my sheets, but something woke me up. So I turned my head to the right, and that's the right of my bed. There's just the empty room, the open section of my room. And there's an older lady standing right there next to my bed. She was a different time frame. I could tell. She was a more modern time frame, not present day, I don't think, but she looked like she had clothes from I thought like maybe the 70s, 80s. It could have been 60s, 70s, or 80s. She had curly, very, very tight, curly white hair. She had glasses on, and she was wearing like a polyester short sleeve shirt with buttons down and then like polyester pants. She also was looking at me with that same like crinkled eyebrows, but seemed annoyed at me or something. And that was kind of partly what kind of creeped me out a little bit, was the way that I was being looked at, and this sort of annoyed at or something. Like, I don't know. They were just trying to figure out what they are looking at when they're looking at me. So I just, when I saw it happened quick, and then I turned my head really quick, and then I looked back and I didn't see her anymore. So I kept living life, kept, doing my thing. I moved from there, and let's say, I don't know, like 6 months later, a year later, let's say I moved from there in 2003 or so. About 6 months later, I was invited back up there for 4th of July or something. And the husband and the wife had separated, and so she was now living that's why I moved out, because I was wanting to move out because I wanted to move back down to town. I wanted to go back to college, save money on rent, and then they were needing somewhere for her to be while they were in the beginnings of their separation. So it really was worked out okay for everybody. So I went back up there, and I was talking to their son. We're all on the front porch, and I said, "Dustin, did I tell you about the ghosts that I saw in this house?" And he looked at me, and I thought he was looking at me, and I thought he was going to say like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." But he said, "Do you remember that other Tricia, the other girl that lived here? Not the girl before you, but the one before that. The one that Tricia. They thought she was a little weird, and they thought maybe she was on drugs or something." That was just their words. She would stay up late and whatever she was doing or whatever. So I said, what, why are you looking at me like that? He said, "She saw the same things." And I was like, no way. Okay, I know what I saw, but when you get the verification, there's this extra, wow. It shifted my life in that moment. Like, it really made me have another level of processing, looking back at my life, at my experiences. I had forgotten some of these things that I'm telling you guys. Like, when did this start? When did I start having experiences? So that was, wow. I mean, I would have never known that, unless I said that to him. I didn't know her at all. That was amazing. So I don't know, like, let's say a year goes by. It's 2004. I'm living in a house that I'm doing like a house sharing, renting a room in a friend's house. And this house, I would say, was the most paranormally active house, the room I was in. I think that it's possible that maybe her sons, or maybe even the people before them, I don't know how long they had lived there. I don't know, but I think that there was some possible history of possibly playing with the Ouija board. Possibly. I say that just because there seemed to be like a portal in my room, like doors in and out in my room. I ended up getting on an episode of a kind of silly show called Stalked by a Ghost. It was in 2013. I tell the story of what I'm going to tell you guys. One of the stories. I had one of the most positive experiences in this room, and then also a very creepy experience in this room. I will wake up in the middle of the night and see things. So this one night, this room too, it was at the end of the hall, and basically it was at the very end of the hall, like the doorway to my room was the very end of the hall, straight shot into my room. So the room was always cold. I remember that. When you're learning about all these different things, I was like, oh yeah, I could never be warm in this room. I was always bundled up in my blankets. And I would see really strange things in this room. It sounds so strange, but it is just what it is. But I would open my eyes. One time I looked up and I saw like a man, human form coming through the wall into the room, like running through midair above me. This small form of a man, sort of man-ish looking figure. When that happens, it's just what are you going to do? Who are you going to call? It's just happening. So that happened. Open my eyes. I see just this strange shape floating around in the room. Just sometimes these strange shapes. One time it almost looked like, in the old days where someone's holding like a candle in their finger. They're holding that little apparatus thingy that's holding the candle. Just seeing weird shaped objects kind of coming out of the closet. And I just look, and then it starts dissipating, and then it goes away. So this one night, okay, I'm going to tell you a little story. I had been trying to get a hold of an ex-boyfriend for a couple years. Like, I felt compelled to call him and talk to him and tell him some things like, thank you for this and I'm sorry for that. I called over the years many times, tried to get a hold of him, and just wasn't, able to. I tried. So long story short, kept trying to call. I called. Somebody finally answered the phone. It was his mom, and he said he died. And he had died 4 days before that. That was obviously very traumatizing time, figuring out all that, trying to make sense of all that. Found out that he took his own life. Found out about the whole process of what he did, what led up to it, all that stuff. So he died on a Tuesday. Okay, so the Tuesday before that, I woke up in the middle of the night. I look over to the left side of the bed, and there was that part of the room was the walkway through all my furniture, the open space part of the room. And there's a man standing there. So at this time in my life, I am 34. This was 2004. He looked like he was in his mid-30s or so, maybe a little older. Very good-looking guy. I was like, who is this? Wow, it was fascinating. This guy just standing there. He had like sandy brown, blondish brown hair, nice style, short haircut, with a nice button-down shirt and nice shorts. Like he was to me, he looked like he was going to go hang out and like do a backyard barbecue with some friends or something like that. That's what it felt like to me. And he was looking at me. We were looking at each other in the eyes. There was something very important happening in these moments. And I could feel that as it was happening. At that time in my life, it didn't occur to me to maybe try to say something. I think I just didn't want to disturb the moment. Like it was just happening and I was taking it in and just in amazement. After some time, I don't know, 30 seconds, a minute, I'm not sure, 2 minutes, I'm not sure the time, but it was like he just then turned to his right, started walking through my dresser, and then as he was continuing to walk towards the wall and then into the wall, he was dissipating and then was fading away and was gone. And to this day, I mean, I know now who he was. I was able to find out actually. Some years went by where I was wondering, when I got to be on this episode, we talked about this and she had a different idea of it. So that was that particular night. So then this Saturday morning, when I'm hearing that my friend died, he had died that 4 days before on a Tuesday night. So he died a week after I saw this person, this man in my room. I found out on that Saturday morning that he died. So that night, I was getting ready to go to bed. The light was out in my room, very dark in the room. And I started feeling that there was a presence next to my bed on my left side. And it put off such a strong vibe. Very, very strong. And I just was like, it just gave me the strongest feeling of EBGBs I have ever had. And so I just very slowly and pretending I didn't know that it was there, I put the covers over my head and I turned away and I held very still. Whatever this was, whoever, whatever, was so wanting me to feel it. It was really strong, a really, really, really strong presence feeling. And I just held still and I tried not to breathe deep. And I just waited it out. And finally, I don't know, it felt like 20 minutes, a half hour. I'm not sure. It finally left. That feeling of it finally left. And I was able to go to sleep. So after that, within the next, I don't remember, days, weeks, I come home one day, maybe it was in the evening, and I start walking down the hall towards my room. And as I got closer, I did not want to go in my room. I felt like there was someone in my room that I did not want to participate with at all. So I got to the door frame and I'm like, nope, I'm going to go back out into the family room and I'm going to hang out there. I'm like, I didn't even want to stay the night in my room. So I was going to sleep on the couch. The way this house was, you go back down the hall and then in the center of the house is the kitchen. So you have to walk through the kitchen where the kitchen, like on one side of the kitchen is where the dining table and all that. And then the other side of the kitchen is where they walk into the little space where there's the refrigerator and the stove and the sink and all that. I walk through the kitchen. You go down a stair to the little like family room right there, TV room. So I'm laying on the couch and in the kitchen, there's a space, just there's tile, well, not tile. I think it's like linoleum floor. There's a water jug dispenser thing that's on one kind of near the refrigerator on its own stand up in the air. I'm out there watching TV and all of a sudden I can feel that whoever was in my room is now walking down the hall towards me. I can't see it, but I just feel it. So I'm looking over there and then I'm looking back at the TV and I'm like looking over there and back and forth and I can feel it walking slowly, like it's trying to sneak up on me. That's kind of like what it felt like. And as it goes from the hallway, then now entering into the kitchen, I can feel it coming towards me and it goes past the water jug and the water jug gurgled, like right when I was feeling it in that spot. And this is the part that's on the episode, is me describing this. And of course they dramatize it even more. And people are like, oh my God, Tricia, are you okay? Immediately, okay, so anyway, so it's walking towards me and I'm like trying to think of, oh my God, what am I going to do? I think actually now would be like when this is happening, I think I had turned off the TV. Then I was trying to figure out what to do. So it's coming closer and now it's down the step. I don't see anything. I'm just still feeling it and it's coming closer and it's now about coming around the lazy boy chair and I turn on the TV. I don't know what something made me think that if I turn on the TV, the light or the movement or I don't know, it'll make it stop or make it go away. And it did. It kind of just poofed away. So it just was gone. That was pretty trippy. So in my life after that, I'm wanting to learn how to protect myself better, how to be in a better, energy so that those experiences don't happen. It's been one of my gatherings of information of understanding metaphysics so that you can have the really super, super good experiences around you and the the good spirits and the helping spirits and the archangels and the angels and what am I trying to say? The spirit guides, your loved ones, anything that's of benefit from the light, that there is a good feeling around it is what I'm about. And so I was in process of learning all that stuff. So still at this house, and it was about a month after he died. I walk into the room. It's during the day. I can tell that my friend that had died, my ex-boyfriend, I can tell that it is him. I can feel his presence. Like, your people. You can feel their presence. You know who they are, their personality and that kind of thing. And I knew that he was standing in the kitchen in this specific spot, and I decided that I wanted to just take it in and take in that this is happening. This experience is happening. I went and laid down on the couch, and while it was happening, all of a sudden all the lights went out in the house, like the power went out. And for some reason, it didn't scare me at all. Like, it didn't affect me whatsoever. My friend came home, the lady who owns the house, and I'm laying there in the dark, and I say, Dave's here. She just turned and left. I think that's just funny because she was in totally not having any experiences or not believing any of the things I was saying and that kind of thing. So that was 2004 that happened. Things like that were going on.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's myparaex.com. Thanks for listening.